So I think I'd love now to hear from Vimlendra because FAO has really done some remarkable, successful things in the way of youth having leadership roles at the grassroots level in agricultural practices. So I'm curious in thinking about, the global community and where we're still struggling to gain youth interest, but FAO has seemed to be moving a mark on that a little bit. And I'd like to know if you could both summarize the urgency of youth leadership in decreasing the food waste, which is a big component of ending hunger and having more resilient food systems, but also, what are some of these best practices in FAO, in addition to thinking about the youth leadership of the food waste and the resilient components?
Thank you. Let me start with the urgency question. So what do the demographic projections for 2050 look like? You are looking at about 9.5 billion people inhabiting this planet. FAO estimates tell you that you will need at least about 60% more food than what you grow today to feed this population. The urgency is, the question is, who will grow this food? Everything else comes later. The food systems comes after the food. Who will grow this food? If you look at the rural demographics which have come up now, the average age of an American farmer is 58.3 years. Average age of an African farmer is about 60 years. Asia, 60. Japan, 67. In Europe, of the men who are involved in farming, only 18% are less than 35. Of the women who are involved in farming in EU, only 16% are less than 35. So we know that there is a problem on hand. How do we really go ahead and tackle this? The basic issue is, how do you keep the youth engaged in agriculture once they have the choice to leave agriculture? Till the time I'm not educated, till the time it is my last refuge, I can do nothing, so I go back on land. That's not what is going to really help agriculture. What's going to help agriculture is when the youth who is educated and talented and trained takes agriculture as a profession of first choice. That's not happening. So you have to have a system which balances the romance and the business model of farming. You do hear these stories sometimes of people, young people taking to farming. Sounds very romantic, very good. But on a large scale, unless you make it as a profession choice, because there is a business model, because there is a return, you will not have the youth going back there. So it has to be a very good balance between romance of agriculture and a business proposition which gives you a good return. FAO did a study with IFAD and CTA, which came out with the key challenges and solutions. I think we have placed the key executive summary of that study outside. Many challenges were identified. A couple of them have already been spoken about. Most important, of course, is the access to land. Access to land because A, farmland, good farmland is becoming costly, and B, in most of the developing world, access to land through inheritance is extremely complicated. Just a pointer here to why in the developing poor world, say for example, I know for sure in India, why are these inheritance laws not allowing land to go down? The social security system for old people are not there. And the father does not want to distribute the land to his sons for a huge fear that the day he gives the land to his sons, he's out of the whole system. He's kicked out, and there's no one to care for him. Till the time he holds the land, he holds power. There is a huge problem in getting this land down to the youth, and when it does come, it comes in fragmented pieces. So there is another problem which comes in here about the land size or the plot sizes which are coming, and this story is true in most of the developing world in Asia and Africa. Access to land has become a huge issue. We have some examples. Egypt started giving land reclaimed from the desert to educated graduates, and that program in Egypt has done wonders, and today you have fantastic tomatoes being grown there, And Heinz tomato ketchup, which most of us are familiar with, that sources tomato from these farmlands in Egypt, which were actually given to graduates who came, but these were deserts earlier. Access to credit, that's another huge issue. You walk into a bank and show me a financial institution which will give credit to any youth without a collateral in land. Insurance, not willing to work with the youth. So there's a huge problem with credit. Canada has a good example. It has a public-private investment fund where the government of Quebec and I think the Quebec Labor Union and others have come together for a $75 million fund, which gives seed money for young entrepreneurs to take to agriculture. You have a problem of market. How do you link the produce to the market? Unless you provide remunerative return, which cannot come unless the market has been linked, the youth is not going to come back. So we have to look at markets. You have to look at education, which all of us have spoken so much about. But then, there's a problem. It's a double-edged sword. I'm not taking away from the huge impact which education has had and the good impact which has had, but there's one negative impact as far as agriculture is concerned. Mass education has brought the status of agriculture down. The moment I'm educated, my aspirations go up, and somehow these aspirations are not linked to agriculture. I am yet to meet a farmer who is educating his son to come back to farming. Every farmer you talk to wants his son or daughter educated because he wants his son and daughter to graduate out and go leave farming and go out. I'm yet to meet anyone who wants. A doctor wants his son or daughter to become a doctor. A lawyer wants his son or daughter to become a lawyer. But I'm yet to meet a farmer who wants his son or daughter to come back to farming after education. And this is more true of the developing poor world than it may be of a developed US or Canada. But the solution there lies in education itself, because we have to educate the youth to really take to the changed, technologically advanced form of agriculture which is coming in now. The last problem which was identified was the problem of involvement of youth in policies. And the voice of the youth has been lacking and still lacks in policy formulation for the youth. So it's, as she said, it's the archaic historical people like us who, 60s and 50s, who are planning for people who are 15s and 20s and 25s. The voice of the 25 and the 30 is not being heard by us. And that is something which is a huge missing link. There have been attempts to get this going in many countries. FAO is also hugely involved in this exercise. But we still find that there is a gap. In some, I think it's the economic.
We're at time, so if I could have you give
the
the
last
example.
sentence. The economic and social attractiveness of farming is what is going to get people back. And we need, therefore, to have increased public spending. We need to have action to initiate technical education, training, financial access, and effective extension systems. Examples of FAO, a number of countries. Let me take just two for you. I have a lot written out. Nigeria, FAO is doing a huge program with the government on the national youth employment and agriculture. We have developed innovative field-tested approaches of FAO's junior farmer field to educate the young farmers. So there's a lot of exercise that goes on. FAO also is very actively involved with many national governments in their policy formulation to bring the youth, try and bring the youth back into fold of agriculture, because we do realize that today we are getting our food in abundant quantity, we are getting it cheap. Therefore, this problem, though it exists, is still in the peripheral of policy planners. But if we do not change this trend, it's going to hit us, and hit us very hard in the years to come. My last, final line is, we are optimistic, but we feel that this optimism should not really lead to complacency. And we have to be alert on what is happening in the field and try and get the young people back into agriculture soon. Thank you.